And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, February 19th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get into what we were going to talk about for today. So we'll start off the show by talking about Jimmy Garoppolo being suspended and also being released by the Raiders, and we'll talk about that and how that impacts the Raiders' quarterback situation going forward. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about some scenarios that could define the offseason. It was an article that I saw on Bleacher Report, and I wanted to talk about that and give my thoughts on these possible moves, these possible scenarios. So we'll get into that. Then we will talk about Micah Parsons and a couple of things he suggested the Cowboys should do in the offseason. And then we'll talk about the Steelers quarterback situation once again, because there's some stuff to talk about regarding Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. So that will be the final part of the show. So with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. And this, honestly, this was like kind of surprising. This kind of just, I don't know, came out of nowhere. So he is going to be suspended for the first 2 games next season because he violated the NFL's performance enhancing substance policy. And the reason for that, and I did a short on this, and it took me 7 tries to say the correct thing, and because I want to pull up the Adam Schefter tweet really quickly. So yeah, so he's going to be suspended, and now if I could, I wish I had the tweet up right away, but of course it's not going to come up. And the reason for that is, I know it doesn't, and it doesn't say it, of course, but it basically, it had to do with the medication he was doing. So yeah, so he was using a prescribed medication without obtaining a valid therapeutic use exemption. That's what it was, and that's a mouthful. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't, it's not like when you look at some other scenarios and it's like, the person was, trying to, get a competitive advantage over other players. But I get, yeah, it's just one of those things where, you were taking medication and it's something that wasn't approved. And that ended up happening, and now he's suspended. Now, to go along with that, the Raiders, they ended up suspending, they ended up releasing Garoppolo, which you kind of figured was going to happen. And yeah, that was that turned out not to be a good signing, which I think we all kind of figured. But yeah, so this was anticipated, especially after he was benched for AidanO'Connell during the season. The Raiders will release Garoppolo before an $11.25 million roster bonus would activate in March, saving $11.269 million on the salary cap. Garoppolo signed a 3-year, $72.75 million contract last offseason, but again, injuries and just did not play well. That led to him being benched and ultimately being released. Now, this will result in about a $17 million dead cap money hit, but will provide cap savings for the team. Listen, the Raiders have the number 13 overall pick, so I mean, most likely they'll probably, I mean, you would think maybe they're going to go with a quarterback. Now, listen, AidanO'Connell didn't do a bad job. There were definitely some games though where he didn't play well. Other times he did. I mean, you go back to the game against the Vikings when the Raiders lost 3-0. That's one that comes to mind. You also go, I mean, listen, they did beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, but that was also because, they didn't complete a pass after the first quarter, which is crazy to think about, because they had the 2 defensive touchdowns, and listen, they ran the ball with Zamir White, and again, I'll bring it up. He was part of the reason why I lost in the playoffs in my fantasy playoffs. So I'm upset about that. Still, I'm not going to get over it. But yeah, I mean, listen, I think AidanO'Connell will still be on this team, but I don't think he's not the starter moving forward. They're gonna have to upgrade. Now, I don't know where, if it's gonna be through the draft, most likely, I think. But I also an article I was looking at, they also listed 4 quarterbacks that they could possibly go with. So they brought up Jacoby Brissett. Now, Jacoby Brissett's bounced around a lot since being with the Patriots, and listen, I think he's a quality backup quarterback. I mean, and he was the starter for the Browns, when they were waiting for Deshaun Watson to come back, not this past season but last year. And he wins games, and I think that's definitely somebody to consider. But again, they might be looking towards the draft. Now, they also mentioned Tyrod Taylor as well, another experienced quarterback. Was decent for the Giants at times. They won a couple of games with him. But then they bring up in the draft, they talk about J.J. McCarthy from Michigan and also Spencer Rattler as well. And it says how he could be a day 2 pick, Spencer Rattler. So, we'll just have to wait and see what they end up doing. They changed offensive coordinators, bringing in Luke Getsky over from the Bears. Now, it's unlikely that maybe they trade for a quarterback. So it's either they're going to sign somebody or they're going to draft somebody. That's really what it's going to come down to. But yeah, I mean, you kind of feel for Garoppolo because he goes from the 49ers, goes to the Raiders, and it was a downward spiral. And I honestly thought that when he first got to the 49ers that he was going to be a really good player for them. Because I want to go back to when he first got there. And, yeah, so with the Niners in 2017, had 1,500 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. But if you go back to all those games, they won every game that he started in 2017 when he got there. I want to just pull that up really quick. And even in the couple games that he played in 2018, I mean, I know they lost the first game of the year to the Vikings, but I don't know. I thought I thought he looked good, and then he gets hurt, comes back, and listen, the 49ers go to the Super Bowl, but I don't know. It seemed like he just wasn't the same player before the ACL injury that he suffered against the Chiefs in 2018. But yeah, I mean, he won every game that he started. So his first game was against the Bears, won that. He actually came in late the previous week against the Seahawks. I remember that. But yeah, they beat the Bears, then they beat the Texans, the Titans, the Jaguars. They beat a couple of playoff teams in there, Titans and the Jaguars. And then they also, again, the Rams were resting their starters, but, he won that game as well. So, and the Niners started off the year 0-9. So imagine if they would have got Garoppolo earlier, what would have happened? Yeah, so they ended up finishing 6-10. And, and then gets hurt the following season. They go to the Super Bowl. They lose to the Chiefs. Then 2020 happens. The 49ers get ravaged by injuries. And the Niners, they drafted Trey Lance, and he was supposed to be the guy. But, Garoppolo plays in 2021, get to the NFC Championship game. The following year, Trey Lance is the starter. He gets hurt. Garoppolo comes in, and the Niners looked good. And then he gets hurt, and then Brock Purdy comes in, and that was the end of Garoppolo. And then he ends up on the Raiders reuniting with Josh McDaniels, and it really just did not go well for him there. And the Raiders, they won their first game against the Broncos. And, then I remember, playing against the Bills, they they go right down the field in their first drive, and then the Bills just dominated the rest of the game. That ended up being a blowout loss. But yeah, so Garoppolo, in his only season with the Raiders, 1,200 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 77.7 passer rating. Yeah, not good. Not good. And listen, now he's going to... Well, first of all, he's got to get past the suspension, which, again, is only 2 games. But, now he's got to try to build up his value again. And I feel like a team will give him a shot. At least just pick him up, maybe be a backup. I think he can at least do that. But, yeah, it's just... and this is the other thing I was talking about, too, last week when talking about the Patriots. I was supposed to replace Brady. That's what Belichick wanted. And Robert Kraft was like, we're not doing that. And, yeah. So, things changed. Goes to the 49ers. Looked like he was going to be the guy there for a long time. And it just, the 49ers tried to draft his replacement. And then it ended up being Brock Purdy instead. It was supposed to be Trey Lance. They gave up a lot to get move up in the draft to draft Trey Lance. And then, Brock Purdy ends up being the replacement. Then you go to the Raiders, and that Lions game was rough because they tried to get the ball to Davante Adams, but he's overthrowing him. Then he's underthrowing him, and it's getting picked off. It just, yeah. And also, again, he gets hurt a lot. I mean, the Steelers game during the year. I mean, he just. I remember, the way he got tackled on a play, it just, I feel like he just gets unlucky sometimes with his injuries. Like, the injuries just find a way he just gets injured, but he's not even, I don't even know how to say it. Like, he's just not even trying to, I mean, obviously people are not trying to get hurt, but, it's just how he gets tackled on some plays. I mean, you go back to last year when he gets hurt against Miami, it was how he got tackled, and that's what happened with the foot injury. I mean, against the Steelers, I mean, the play, you know what I'm talking about, where it looked like he was just his legs were caught underneath, and he was bending back this way, and that's just what happens. He's just unlucky, I feel like, when it comes to the injuries. So, but again, I think he deserves a chance to be a backup somewhere. So, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But, the Raiders, their quarterback situation, right now it's unknown. But you still got AidanO'Connell, probably still be on the team. But, yeah, whether they go with the veteran or with the draft, which, I mean, they got the 13th pick. I mean, it doesn't... I mean, we'll see if maybe they trade up, but, whoever falls to them, they'll, take them. Because, you know what, they do have a good supporting cast. You got Davante Adams still there, although we'll talk about him in a second of one of the possible scenarios that could happen in the offseason, but I might, it's possible, but I'm not going to say it's likely. But you got him, you got Jacoby Myers. I don't know what they're going to do with the running back situation, whether they keep Josh Jacobs, they move off him, because Zamir White was good when Jacobs was hurt. So, I mean, I don't think the Raiders' situation is horrible. It definitely is a lot better than what it's been in years past. So, I mean, Davante Adams is still one of the best receivers in the NFL. So, automatically you're stepping into a better situation with him there. But we'll see. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it when talking about this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this whole Garoppolo situation. Because, again, it was kind of interesting that, the suspension part, yes. The being released, that doesn't really surprise me. But let me know what you guys think about it. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we'll talk about possible moves that could impact the NFL offseason. Again, an article I saw on Bleacher Report. I'll talk about the likelihood of some of the moves here, and that will be the second part of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.